Okay, so thank you for turning off your cameras and muting for just a minute, and we'll turn those back on in a minute. So I've been asking you guys to take notes on videos, and we're really, really lucky to have these resources. As I've told you, some of the resources we've been using have been from professors at Ivy League universities. So it's a cool situation where we get, sort of the benefit of their expertise. But I recognize that I've been sort of hinting at some things and not taking the time to explain what exactly I mean by that. So I wanted to take just 1 minute and sort of explain those. So right now you should see a video that I asked you to watch at the beginning of class today. So there are a couple of tools that I wanted to make you aware of that I use, at least for myself, and that I hope are helpful for you as well. So you can watch this video.
Often a distinction is made between quantitative research, which is based.
And you can hear from Dr. Seamus Khan, who's a professor at Columbia University. The two things that I am going to encourage you to do are both to take control of this situation and then use it as best you can. So the two use that I like to use here are, I personally turn the playback speed up. I think 1.5, you can still understand him pretty well.
Experiments, primarily, their orientation is to control the environment to isolate the effects of a single item.
So I usually control the speed. And for me, what I do is if I'm confused by something, then one, I definitely pause and I go back, and then I can kind of manipulate the speed. So I recognize that a part of this is, as your teacher, I'm familiar with this content. So if you're feeling like, normal speed is really all I can handle and take notes at the same time, that's fine. Similarly, if you're like, I think I get this, but there are points that I want to go back to, you could go up to 2 times speed. And then when you come to something you're confused by, right? Or when he does something and you're like, Mr. Richardson's probably going to ask me a question about this, that might be the time to go back just a minute and go back to a slower speed. Okay, so I just wanted to emphasize, y'all should be in control of the tools that you are using. Okay, don't be afraid to sort of take control. Another tool that I think is helpful for you, we talked yesterday about some of you like to read versus some of you like these lecture formats. Luckily with YouTube, you kind of have the option to use both. Okay, so using the transcript, which obviously you guys know that there's the subtitle function down here, but what you might not know is if you click on these 3 dots right here below the video, it'll say open transcript, and it'll lay out by timestamp what Dr. Khan is saying. Okay, so that can be a really, really helpful tool. And if you really wanted to be fancy, you could toggle timestamps and you could copy and paste this into another document, even though it kind of looks like modern poetry. So that is, I think, tools that are valuable for as you're watching this video. I wanted to really, really briefly also explain what I'm doing while I'm watching the video, and I think that this is a useful tool for you. This is the same technique that I used in undergrad and grad school at Carolina. This is just the way that I process information, so it's not the only way, but I do think it's helpful. So as I am watching, I'm taking notes. I think that there is a lot of research that shows that if you are not actively engaged with the content that you're watching, then you're not going to remember it. Okay, so as I'm watching, the first step that I do is I take handwritten notes. So even though I'm teaching this stuff, as I watch this to prepare to teach you guys, these are the notes that I took. I'm doing the same thing that you guys are doing, right? I'm indenting, I'm underlining, I'm drawing lines between connections. For me, I had these are things that I don't think he included that I wanted to include, so I make a little note next to that, right? For you, it might be, this is a question that I have, okay? If you're familiar with Cornell notes, you will recall that Cornell encourages you to both put questions on the side, and this is varsity level stuff, but the cognitive science behind it is really, really valuable. They also encourage you at the end of a note session to write like a 1 sentence to 1 paragraph summary of everything that you just learned. Okay, this is the same theory that we're using at the end of class when I ask you guys to summarize what you learned. This is called metacognitive retrieval. Okay, so basically it's forcing you to think back to what did you do, and by thinking about it, you're literally carving those pathways. So it's pretty cool theory. Finally, what I've always done is rather than just reading over my notes, I will then put my notes in a different format. So in college, what I would do is I would record the lectures as I was listening to them, and I would take handwritten notes, and then I would go into the library later that day and I would type up my notes. So here's a glimpse into what that looks like for me. So I showed you my handwritten notes that I took while watching the 2 videos that we've watched over the past 2 days. And then I went and typed them up. Again, we've got tiers, right? So for method notes, we watched 2 videos, the intro and types of methods. And for each of those, what are the sort of big things that we talked about? For me, I highlighted things that I wanted to emphasize with you because they're things that he did not really, mention. And similarly, there are things like, for you, I would expect you to have a little bit more information under Nazis because, like, I know what that was, but I didn't feel like writing it down. Okay. So the process of putting it into a new format, if you're feeling super confident in this class and you don't want to do that, I'm not going to be like deeply offended. But the science behind this is that you are re-engaging with the material. If you're just like scanning the notes that you wrote, okay, that's not much better than just listening to something. The science says, okay? So by being in charge of the video when you are when you're taking in the content for the first time, by taking notes and recontextualizing those notes, my hope is that all of those will help you guys to ultimately be successful, both in this class and those skills absolutely transfer. Those helped me in high school. Well, actually, I don't think I was good at taking notes in high school. Probably a lot like you guys, right? A lot of you have probably succeeded in high school pretty easily, or maybe you've hit a class that has been really, really difficult, right? But once I got into college, I really had to get purposeful about, having a system in place. So this helped me in undergrad, this helped me in grad school, and I still use it today. So I hope that was helpful.